go ahead and dive in. We are so excited to be joined today by Jules Johnston and Leanne Starace from Equinix. For those who don't know, Equinix connects the world's leading businesses to their customers, employees, and partners inside the most interconnected data centers. On their global platform for digital business, companies come together with the largest ecosystems of interconnected partners and providers to accelerate digital transformation. The company helps businesses globally deploy infrastructure and services wherever opportunity leads. And if that doesn't sound cool or appealing enough, they also just happen to have a phenomenal culture that women rave about. FGBers currently rank Equinix as one of the best companies for women, and it's clear this culture permeates throughout the company and definitely starts at the top, with Equinix's CEO, Charles Myers, taking the top spot on FGB's top CEOs who support gender diversity list. So we are just so thrilled to have Jules and Leanne with us today to share more about their experiences with the company. And I'd like to turn it over to them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what they do at the company. Jules, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having us. So I'm Jules Johnston, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Channel at Equinix. And what that means is I lead the approximately 200-person group that looks after our partners and tries to develop our relationships with them so they can sell their services in conjunction with ours to end customers. So we function as an overlay to the larger global field sales force.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And Leanne, what about you?
Thank you, Mary. My name is Leanne Starace, and I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C., where I live. I am currently the Senior Vice President of Global Technical Sales at Equinix. And what that means is I lead a team of about 340 sales architects and engineers in North America, in Latin America, Europe, in the Middle East, Asia, and Australia. And my team members work with the field sellers, the channel sellers, and our largest major account, and also our mid-market sellers to develop opportunities for our customers as they look to digitally transform their businesses, Mary.
Awesome. It sounds like you both have had incredible careers with the company. And we'd love to hear from y'all about what initially drew you to Equinix and how long you've been with the company. Leanne, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Thanks, Mary. I've been with the company. It'll be just 3 years at the end of the summer. So relatively new in terms of tenure here. And what really drew me to Equinix first and foremost was the amazing culture that you spoke about, Mary. You know, it's an incredibly collaborative culture here at Equinix, and it's incredibly high energy. So if you're drawn to a place that has an entrepreneurial spirit, where team members are really fiercely dedicated to helping each other and also to collectively helping the customers and company to be as successful as possible, there's also a tremendous team spirit here. It's a very respectful and inclusive culture. Team members are incredibly generous. And there's also really great diversity at Equinix. And to me, that was something that was very magnetic as I was looking for my next stop on my career journey, Mary.
I love that. Collaborative cultures are so important. And I love the high energy that you spoke about. And Jules, what about you? What has your career been like and what drew you to Equinix?
Much the same in terms of the attraction that Leanne referenced. I've been here just over 5.5 years. And so I came here as part of the company's really first concerted investment in building out channels as an indirect selling motion and co-selling with partners. And so it was a very small piece of our business 5.5 years ago. So it was a really unique opportunity to be part of something that has that entrepreneurial, almost startup feeling inside a company that is as well run and has been as successful as Equinix. So in some ways, the best of both worlds, to have sort of that entrepreneurial experience, but also have the wherewithal being, a powerhouse like Equinix. And I would agree. I think the culture is a huge differentiator for us. It is the best blend of EQ and IQ on any one team that I've ever found.
Awesome. So you both have pretty senior roles as SVPs at Equinix. Can you talk to the audience a little bit about your career journey and how you've gotten there? Jules, do you want to start?
Sure. So I've mostly been actually a career channel person. So I have had channel sales type roles in companies big and small and progressive leadership opportunities, mostly in that lane. But I think the success I've had in the later stage of my career probably has as much to do with the time that I stepped off that track as anything else. So I was fortunate to spend 4 years as a chief of staff and as a head of HR and business operations, which is not a typical path. But I just want to throw out there that sometimes there are those kinds of opportunities that can be really inspiring, and if the work and the skills development inspires you, you shouldn't be afraid to step off the track or step to the side. For me, that it was really profound, and I'm sure that I'm a better leader in channel sales because of that, having done so.
Absolutely. And I have to imagine those experiences give you a more comprehensive look at the business by, going through different teams and different departments to see how everything functions and pieces together. That's such a cool journey and great advice that you shared. And Leanne, what about you? What has your career path looked like?
Well, thank you, Mary. Maybe I'll talk about it a little bit differently than the way Jules talked about it, although I do agree with her perspective of having these inspirational roles that sort of propel you forward in your career. But I didn't start out at the beginning of my career ever anticipating that I would be leading a team of technical salespeople. In fact, just the opposite. When I graduated from college, I was working in a tax and law firm, and I really thought I would end up being an attorney. I think Jules also too. We talked about this. I thought I'd end up being an attorney. And then I thought about, the student loan aspect of what that would look like, and maybe some of the hours associated with being a new lawyer. And it really had me reconsider. And chance brought me to a small internet startup when I was in my 20s. And I joined a product organization while I was there, and it was really high energy because the internet was very much booming at this time. And there was just a tremendous amount of excitement around it. And I was approached while I was at this very small company by the SVP of sales and asked to join his team. And of course, I had no experience in selling anything to anyone. So I was really intimidated by that ask, but I realized that I could have a material impact on my income based on my performance. And that aspect of my hard work and my merit impacting how much I could earn really intrigued me. And so I did move over under his leadership, and he taught me how to be a salesperson. I became hooked on sales at that point. And I've been in sales in different roles ever since. And some people may think that sales is narrowly defined as a specific profession where you sell a product or service to a consumer. And I think more sales is more a skill that people have in their personal and professional lives. And sales has many roles. You could be someone who brings in new business to a company or develops very important large accounts that requires a different skill set. You could be someone who works as an overlay seller, as Jules's team does, and that has a different skill set and profile to it. You could be someone who's focused on retaining revenue in business, and that has a different profile to it. So I think there are these skills that we have as humans of always negotiating or presenting ourselves that really translate into careers in sales. And in my career, I've been an individual contributor. I moved into a team lead and then a sales manager. Then I was a director, a VP of sales in 2 different companies, and moved to my current role as SVP. And the entire process was about a 20-year journey. So it does take some time, and you don't need to know where you're going to end up to be really excited about the beginning, because I think it's a bit of an evolution.
Yeah, you're so right. And I think what both of you shared, it's very telling that no career path is linear, and you just, you do the work, and you might don't know where you're going to end up in the end, but you can achieve it. I love that. Thank you both for sharing how you've gotten to where you are. And Leanne, you alluded to this a little bit with the skill sets, and that, different profiles for different types of sales jobs, but we have a lot of folks joining us today who would be interested in a career at Equinix. So Leanne, let's maybe start with you. If you could kind of share on average what a typical workday could look like for someone at the company.
Sure. Well, my workday and maybe Jules's workday is a little bit different some other roles because we have global roles, which require us to be have a lot of flexibility in terms of when our days start and end because of the different time zones around the world where we interface with different people in our team and also different clients. I think, days are different based on that kind of schedule. They're also fluid. I have two small children. So I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. They're in different schools and have different requirements for that. So I'd say, we're Equinix folks are usually up early, sort of checking in on what has happened overnight in a different part of the world, since we went to sleep for a few hours. I think, getting ourselves organized in the morning personally and professionally, for me, that means getting my children ready for school and to a bus or to a camp if it's in the summer. We usually start work anytime between 7 and 8:30, I would say, or we're on the road, maybe heading to a train station or an airport when that's starting to be a little bit more possible now. The days are pretty packed solid in the core of it in terms of customer meetings and internal meetings and events like this, which are such a privilege to be part of. And then, the remainder of the day is wrapping up work, fitting in, picking up children, which we have the flexibility certainly to do that, attending sporting events, running errands, and then maybe coming back online a little bit after the dinner hours in our part of the world, what is business in Asia that takes place, from 7 to like 10:30 at night, Mary. It's not typical for everyone, but maybe I'm trying to highlight sort of the flexibility and the fluidity of it, depending on where you are in the country, in the world, and the role that you have interfacing with customers.
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes total sense. And it's so encouraging to hear about the flexibility that y'all are able to have. Jules, what about you? What does a day look like for you and your team?
A lot like what Leanne described. I try to be religious about like taking the dinner hour to be with my family, and I do the same sort of thing coming back online. I'm a maniacal planner, and so I need the morning time. I treasure the time when nobody else is up in my house. I'm an early riser, and so I like have my coffee and really sort of use that time for myself to catch up and to organize myself. And I'm trying to be better in the day, and Equinix is actually giving us some reinforcement around being better about ending meetings a little early and giving people a breath, and trying to build in the whole day of Wednesday where we try to lighten the load from meetings. And I'm trying to be better about building think time before big deliverables. I'm a work in progress on that. But it's the same, I think, wall of Zoom calls if you let it. And so it's important that we try to sort of take control of our calendars and build those spaces and breaks in so we can run the marathon. So I'm trying to do that every day.
Yeah. And Mary, maybe I could just make one comment on what Jules was saying. I think what she touched on is so important, is making time to think and also some time to read and do some learning, because we're in an environment and in an industry that's constantly evolving in technology. And so if we don't take the time to invest in our own professional development, we run the risk of falling behind in what the businesses that we interact with need from us. And so really setting aside that time, as Jules said, is really important. I've blocked 2 hours on Fridays to do reading and learning. And I find that really helps to focus and also to give your mind a little bit of a break between different types of activities as well.
Absolutely. That is such great advice. And I think really taking control of your calendar, as you both mentioned, is so key, and blocking that time so that you don't end up in the wall of Zoom meetings, which, so many people being remote over the last 15 months, that has definitely been something that a lot of workers have experienced. And a great segue into our next question, actually, in terms of remote work. So with folks being remote, and you mentioned Equinix having flexible policies, what are some advantages that y'all think are there for women who are working remotely, and have you used any of them? Jules, how about you?
Yeah, I think there are advantages. In particular, as versus a working mom who has to commute a lengthy commute to an office every day. Even in a pre-pandemic environment, I certainly appreciate that those hours add up. And so those hours are either hours that you can be productive at work or hours you can be there for your family. And so I appreciate not having that burden of the mandatory commute. My youngest is a 13-year-old girl, and she's pretty self-sufficient, and she is old enough to be home alone. But I'm grateful that she doesn't really have to in a after school environment. And so I appreciate the opportunity to check in and stay connected and hear about her day and sort of make sure she's on path, and then still be able to be busy in my home office, but be there for emergencies and be only down the hall. So I think those are that flexibility is helpful to working moms staying connected to their kids and what's going on with them, and stealing back that commute time. So for me, that's been huge.
Absolutely. And Leanne, what about you?
Yeah, thanks, Mary, and thank you, Jules. A lot of what Jules said is very real for me as well. Trading that commute time, which may not be productive, and being able to use that time for something that you can produce really well for either your business obligations or your family obligations. And I think working parents know personal obligations are not always predictable. Life is very fluid. Things come up, whether that's at home or at school. And especially over the last year, it's been challenging to do certain things at certain times because of, rules and regulations. And so just being able to have some flexibility has made it manageable what would have otherwise been very overwhelming, I think, for anyone who's trying to work, raise a family, and also try to get all of the necessities of life accomplished as well. I think the other thing that's really cool about some kind of remote work is being to, what I call like defragging your life, right? So taking these little micro downtimes that you have and being able to check something off, like pay a bill online or throw in a load of laundry or see what's for dinner and pull something out of the freezer. You couldn't do that if you're sitting in a car commuting for an hour or two. And even to have a couple of days a week, whether that's the start of your finish of your week, where you can have that ability to have that additional flexibility, for me as a working parent, has been the only way you could do it. I wouldn't even say game changing. I don't think you could do it if you didn't have flexibility and really feel like you were showing up well for your family and for your employer as well.
I think that's right. So also, if anything breaks in your house and you need somebody to come fix it, you get your dishwasher fixed while you're working, putting in a full day at work. And whatever it is that you can be there to answer the door is so there's benefits abound.
It's so true, especially when you get the work orders and they're like, we'll be there between 8 and 5 p.m. And you're like, that's all day.
Not a thing.
So I think too, with this remote work, it's fair to say everyone has felt an impact from the pandemic. And so I'm curious, from y'all's perspective, how has that not only affected your work, but also your family? Jules, do you want to start?
So I'm in a job that pre-pandemic is pretty heavy travel. And it would be even more so this newer role that I'm in, global responsibilities. So I was used to traveling away from my family often Monday to Thursday. And so as much as I've missed my colleagues and my team and our partners in the pandemic, it's been a gift to have dinner with my family every night. It's been a gift to not be away from, my daughters. And the cooking, not so much a gift, I will say. So I have sort of a joke in my family who said after a few weeks of the pandemic that I couldn't get mad at them, that they wanted to eat every night. Like I said, I fed you on Monday. What are you back at me for? And so we had to settle into some new routines and rotations because I had been in and out, but I think that's overall been really a benefit to us, and for the most part, that's been a gift of the pandemic, that we've had that kind of time. I don't think my cooking's any better, but.
And Leanne, what about you?
Very similar to Jules. I spend quite a bit of time on the road. I'd say the majority of the time I'm traveling some of the week. So that really hard downshift to not traveling at all and to adjusting to a fully remote workspace. I live in the city, so I don't have a ton of space, so I have to work in a corner of my bedroom. So spending 20 hours a day in the same space is, that has a mental impact on you that you have to adjust to and digest. I struggled, to be honest. At the beginning, I had some challenges just figuring out how to adjust my expectations of what my days would look like, just like everyone else, I think, did. Also that, my children, different parts of the world were different, but my children were full virtual, both of them, for over a year. And that was incredibly challenging for us as a family because my husband works full time. I work full time. We didn't have any help. And we had 2 kids, one elementary, one middle, that we were both homeschooling. And some days were great and some days were not. And so we just had to give ourselves a lot of grace during that process of adjusting, understanding that everyone else was pretty much in the same set of circumstances in one way or another, and just doing the best you can. So I really appreciate the time with my children at home, and I appreciate the opportunity I've gotten to see people that are local here to me, but also miss extended family members that I haven't been able to see, and look forward to being able to get out a bit more, Mary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone being thrown to work from home, it was such an adjustment for those of us who were privileged enough to be able to work from home.
Right.
And I think giving yourself grace and recognizing that this is a challenge is really, really important. And you both kind of alluded to this, particularly when you were both traveling so much. How do you find work-life balance in these situations? And I hesitate to even call it work-life balance because I truly feel it's more of like a work-life integration. Leanne, do you want to share some tips about how you find that balance?
Thank you, Mary. And I think the objective of work-life balance is really something for me that's unreasonable. And if I try to strive for something that I would call balance, I would just be setting myself up for a miss. And I don't need more things to be critical about myself. So I think about it more fluidly, work-life Jenga, if you will. And there's great, and then there are days that are chaotic, where things just don't go as well. You have to learn how to prioritize to be good at, saying no sometimes, which is really hard for me. I like to say yes. I want to be involved in everything, whether that's personally or professionally. And you have to learn to think about how you're going to allocate your time. Jules talked about being super organized. I have calendars and Post-its everywhere. Otherwise, I will forget things. Tuesdays, there's a calendar appointment for me to check for birthday parties. Do I have birthday parties coming up, or send cards, or, that sort of things, like reminders for the reminders. It's just really the only way I can stay organized. I think you need a really strong support system to help you to achieve the balance. Can someone else pick up your child if you're running late? Could you drop off at a friend's house, now that we're opening up a little bit, if you have to do a late night call? You can outsource some, like maybe you could get some groceries delivered. Amazon Prime comes to my house every day for the things that I can't manage to get out for. And even though I don't always feel balanced, working at Equinix, I always feel inspired and energized and positive and curious and grateful. So there are trade-offs. You may not feel balanced, but I have all of these wonderful things that are in my life that really help to propel and move me forward as an individual and as a leader here.
I much the same way for me. So I say I'm a maniacal planner, and so people know me say, with enough planning, Jules could be spontaneous. I am, but it doesn't always go according to plan, right? The plan doesn't always survive the execution, but I get soothed a little by that organization. One of the ways I cope with the length of things on the personal and the professional list is, to sort it and prioritize it, like Leanne is talking about. And and I think that's, it's never, no day ends like you thought it would start. And so you just have to, I try to think over the course of a couple of days or over the week, am I getting the main things done for my family and the main things done at work? And the flux and the share of the pie is changing, day to day. And I kind of give myself the room to do that. I'm a big fan of some systems that give you, that morning time that I take even during the week, I also give myself that away. I get up ahead of my family. on the weekends, and the Saturday and Sunday morning time until they get up, that is my guilt-free work on the weekend time, because they're not up and moving. And then when they get up, I flip the switch to them. And I try, when I am with them, to put the phone away and to be with them. And then when they're busy and things are going, then I can also turn my attention back to work. So I try to be as present as I can. I don't think the balance is ever perfect in any one day, but I think it's, if I look at it on the macro scale, I'm mostly doing it.
Yeah.
Thank you both for sharing that. I think, Jules, I'm with you. If I could plan my whole life in advance, I would be totally thrilled. And Leanne, I love the concept of work-life Jenga. It's so true for so many people. So thank you both for sharing that. Before we move on, I do want to remind folks that we will save time at the end for questions for Jules and Leanne. So please feel free to use the Q&A function, and we will try and get to as many of them as possible. So let's talk a little bit about Equinix and how you both have benefited and built really amazing careers. I guess to kick it off, why would you recommend Equinix as an employer of choice for women? Jules, let's start with you.
Well, you said at the outset, that our CEO, Charles Myers, has been really well regarded for his commitment to the quality of the employee experience at the workplace. And you're right about that. And that is also true of his sort of commitment to having our leadership reflect gender diversity. So I would say one reason to be drawn to Equinix as a woman is, we're not just giving lip service to that. The company has purposely moved in. In fact, more recently, I learned we're now at 28% of our VPs and above are female. And that is a sign of progress for us over the last few years. Last year, we added 2 board members, amazing female board members. So we are making evidence in steps forward there. And if you were to look inside the company, you would see just a tremendous variety of talented women who are, I think, very supportive of one another. And, we have an employee connections and network that sponsors Equinix Women Leaders. And so we are not just talking about it, Mary, we are doing those things as a company. And I think, Leanne said at the beginning, it's a really supportive culture. And I think for women who are often their harshest critics of themselves, I know both of us are, and that kind of support at Equinix, I think it's the best I've ever found.
Amazing. And Leanne, what about you? Why do you think Equinix is an employer of choice for women?
Thank you, Mary. Very similar to Jules's perspective. I think, the advancement of women is something that's very important to Charles, our CEO, and our whole executive leadership team. There is a very purposeful focus on, gender diversity in our team so that we more appropriately reflect the customers and the communities that we operate in, and also, the talent and perspectives of women in the organization being viewed as incredibly valuable. I think, the work-life balance is the wrong word, but the work-life meshing together is something that the business really respects. I'm a mother first and an employee second. And if there's ever anything for my family that comes up that I need to make adjustments for, I know the business is wholly supportive of that. Not only that, we build incredibly high performing teams at Equinix. And so you can afford to step aside and take care of your family members. And one of the team members can easily ascend into a position of leadership and take over, whether it's a day or a week or a month, depending on what's happening in your personal life. So I think knowing you have that insurance of a really high performing team is important for women. I think it's a people first culture. As we've gone through the pandemic, the investments that Equinix has made and the transparency and the communication and the care of making sure people's safety and well-being were first and foremost. Charles will talk about that every time he speaks to analysts about what he is most proud of in our performance. It's about how we treat our people and how our people treat each other. And I think that's a a bit of a unicorn culture, to always have people first when you're thinking about your business objectives. And so I think all of those things combined make it an incredible place for women. And it truly is, I was told this before I came here, but I've seen it in action, a place where you can be the very best version of your professional self. And there are no boundaries to that here. So I think for women, that's incredibly important because we think about the places that we can go and have not yet gone. And there really isn't a ring fence around that at Equinix. It's open to as much leadership as you want to strive for.
I would agree with all that.
Yeah, that's amazing. It sounds like such an incredible culture, and where it really, as we stated at the top of our conversation, it really does start with leadership and having those executive leaders who are so supportive of building inclusive and diverse cultures. And Leanne, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but is there anything in y'all's opinion that sets Equinix apart, specifically when it comes to advancing women in leadership?
I would say it starts with Charles. He has a very specific commitment to women in leadership and advancing that really permeates the whole organization. The role that I was in when I first joined Equinix, I was a VP of field sales in the Northeast and Canadian regions. That was a role that was not occupied by a woman before I had that position. So I was a new female in that position. And the role I'm in right now, the SVP of Global Technical Sales, was not occupied by a woman either. So in technical sales leadership, less than 10% of those roles are occupied by women. And both Jules and I carry those senior roles in this technical organization. We have global peers around the world that are SVPs, VPs in our C-suite that are women as well. And we have seen people not just brought into the company at those levels, but like Jules and me have ascended into those levels from VP to SVP roles most recently. And I think just seeing that in action is incredibly inspiring. It's not only our experience and our knowledge and our business acumen that's valued, but the power of diversity in fostering creativity and innovation comes from advancing females, and the business is very dedicated to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. Jules, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Well, I think that one of the other things that we've touched on is a few ways in terms of how supportive Equinix is of women, but there are within Equinix, there are several role models, and Leanne and I both had occasion to work for Arkell Shaw, who is our Senior Vice President of Sales for the Americas. And, I think she and some other senior women leaders at Equinix are extraordinary examples of sort of this equal parts high expectations and high support. And I really try to bring that myself and to develop that as sort of equally demanding and supportive. And I think it's an environment where those role models abound. And I think if you're, in the early stages of your career, I think it can only help you to consider trying to be in a culture like Equinix presents, to sort of give you those kinds of directional markers and role models. And we've had them there and aim to be them.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I do think it's that combination of training you with that high expectation profile so you can be the very best version of yourself, and so that you can excel in this marketplace, which is incredibly competitive, but also giving you the support to be that successful version of yourself, underwriting it, making sure you have what you need, whether that's personal or professional. Jules, I completely agree with you. There's no better place to do that than here, because it really is that fully supportive culture that is also always trying to push us into the future, push us to the next level.
Yeah, that's for sure.
This just sounds incredible, and how you both have been able to take advantage of the culture and support resources at the company and then grow your career simultaneously. It's just great to hear, and appreciate you sharing your journeys with the company. And I'm glad you both brought this up, because it's a great segue into another area that we'd love to chat with you about. So you're both senior leaders at the company. And so how do you both empower and support the women, not just on your team, but throughout the company and your personal network so that they can achieve their biggest ambitions as well? Jules, do you want to start?
I do. And so I think that one of the things I really do try to do is be a connector for women and helping them to build their networks. And certainly for everybody, for the new females in my organization, I make it a point to introduce them to folks outside of the Global Channel organization, to other women leaders. And just recently is introducing to some new hires on my team to Leanne. And so I make it a point to try to connect women who are coming in from the company, especially if they don't already know a group of folks in the company from the industry, to sort of speed that network adoption and that informal channels to navigate and to get guidance. And I think that women can help each other that way. I also try to pay more attention, and I've gotten better at this in recent years, to when people aren't speaking up. And very often, and I've done some reading on this, that will be the woman at the table who maybe isn't bought in, but isn't raising the objection in the bigger forum, or maybe isn't volunteering to present. I think so I try to bring those folks into the light and seek offline time to sort of explore if there's something preventing them from their voice being heard or feeling like their voice is valued. And it's just, you just have to look for opportunities to do that, and just try to stay aware. And so I know none of us is perfect at it, but I try to watch for that and try to pull people in. And I do find that women need a little more pull sometimes to be as confident as they deserve to be.
Great. And Leanne, what about you?
Thanks, Mary. I echo what Jules says, and maybe I'll try to talk about some of the things that are a little different, because everything she says, I fully believe is true to try to help women see in themselves what you can see in them from the position that you sit in. And I think that modeling is really important. If you've heard that phrase, if I can see it, I can be it. So having those examples of women in leadership, I think is critical, whether it's in a company or in the industry or your customers. I think the more we normalize women in leadership levels, the more women can see themselves in those roles. And the journey, as I talked about my journey and Jules talked about hers, it's not linear. It's not like you must do this and then you do this and then you do this. And if you skip one of the steps, you can't be a leader. It's not true. There isn't one formula to get there. And there are things that happen along your career journey, whether that's a mentor or something you're exposed to, or a particular set of circumstances or a role that you have, that can pierce this really thin veil that holds you back from thinking you can do something. My advice to women, which is the advice I give to myself all the time, is you can do more than you think you can. You can do more than you think you can, right? And you might think, oh, it's overwhelming, I can't do that. Well, you can do more than you think you can. These roles above you that you look at, they're occupied by humans. They might be male humans, but they're humans. You're human. You can do this, right? There's nothing so unique and special about somebody who's sitting in one of these seats that should hold you back from trying. And I always say, don't tell yourself no. Let somebody else do that, right? Go for it, and then see what happens. It's an incredible journey to just go on that experience of seeing what you can become. I look to invest in women in leadership roles. I gently apply energy. I don't want to say pressure, but I gently apply energy to encourage women. Because sometimes they do need a nudge. Someone nudged me early in my career. I wouldn't be sitting here if someone didn't apply energy to me and say, I think you can be in sales. I think you can be a leader. I didn't believe that about myself at the time someone saw that in me. So it's maybe having faith in someone you trust and realizing that, I always say, like, what's the worst that's going to happen if I go for it? Okay, I won't get it. Well, I'll be in the same job I'm in right now. And so there's really no downside, but what happens if I get it? Something amazing could unlock for you. So I think it's really having the support of other women and trusting the mentors around you, some of whom are going to be women, some are going to be men, but they can really open doors that you just don't have the experience yet to see.
Well, your colleagues are singing your praises in the chat, and they definitely feel y'all's energy in terms of being role models and, you know, providing support and guidance. So y'all are definitely doing something right.
Well, and we can, Leanne, can I just say, you do
Yeah.
this, and about you encourage women to not read job descriptions so darn literally. Like
Yeah.
we talked about this. We have talked about sometimes how, you know, you're looking for candidates, and, you know, women feel like they need to have 110% of the qualifications. That isn't the same litmus test or lens that your male colleagues are applying. And so, you know, how is it that you can stretch to that way? And so, and, you know, for anybody who's listening, who's thinking about changing jobs or going for the next rung, you know, yes, you need this core skills and competencies, but if you can do the outcomes, if you can drive those outcomes, if you can't, then don't feel like you have to check plus every bullet.
100. That's, if there's nothing else anybody remembers leaving.
Remember
this,
that.
yeah, it's remember this, right? Job descriptions are suggestion. I read them as a suggestion. I absolutely don't take them literally. That was some coaching I received from a senior vice president at my former company, who has now gone on to be a C-level executive in a Fortune 15 company. Never read a job description literally. Think about the unique value you can create and the brilliance that you have, right? That nobody can write down brilliance in a job description and it be super clear what that means. You know, I think if you know you can create change and bring positive value to an organization, you should absolutely go for it. Let somebody else tell you no. Don't tell yourself no.
Such good advice and such a reminder for all of us, because I think to y'all's point, sometimes it takes that outside third party to say, no, I think you can do this, or see qualities in you that you may not see yourself. So we're going to dive into audience Q&A in a few minutes, but, you know, a lot of folks on the webinar with us today would love to know how they could set themselves apart and build a career at Equinix. So I'm curious to know if y'all have any key skills or what advice you have on for women who are interested in joining the company. Jules, do you want to start for us?
Sure. I would give advice in terms of skills. That get somebody you trust to help you inventory where you might want to build on strengths and where you might want. Don't do it just yourself. Don't trust your own self overly critical assessment that you're not good enough here, you don't have enough years here, you haven't done that yet. Get somebody else who you trust, who has seen you in a professional capacity. You can say, hey, you're super strong at, you know, analytical stuff, but you got to work on the presentation of that, or, you know, whatever that is. And so I think that's important. And I do think that there are sometimes specific skills, if it's leadership that you're, you know, looking for. I think there's a lot to be gained from studying and from exposing yourself to ideas and reading and those kinds of things and practicing. And so if you're not in leadership yet, trying to put some of those ideas into practice in a cross-functional volunteer capacity at work, where you're trying to be a team leader and you're trying to develop and hone those facilitation skills. Don't wait for somebody to make you a people manager to show that you can lead people, that you can lead the team, you can lead the table, you can lead the problem solving. And so I think I would say, don't wait for the promotion to show that you can do those things. Get somebody you trust. And maybe this isn't to your skills question, Mary, but my best advice for working moms is to have other working mom friends, because there isn't anybody that'll make you feel better about the stuff that goes wrong, that is really hard. And for me, that's Leanne here very often. And we talk all the time about, you know, like when things go awry, it is another working mom who could say, I forgot my kid at the bus a week ago. It's okay. You know, it's those kinds of, so if you're a working mom, you're a new working mom at work, get working mom friends and help each other. That would be my advice.
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Jules is my support. She's been my support since even before I started at Equinix, when she interviewed me to join the company. And I've got her on Teams and email and text, 24/7, that support and just that fun and joy, something to take a little bit of pressure out of the room if you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you've done something at home where you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm being overly hard on myself right at this moment. I think having that supportive group of working women I could not do this without that. I draw on it daily, to keep me afloat, so you can have that buoyancy that's required to do this. But I would say, in terms of the skill sets, all of the things that Jules mentioned, I love that, having extreme ownership of your own life, right? You take on leadership at every level, and you create opportunities to lead, even if you're not in a leadership role. And so that's incredibly important. But for Equinix, I would say it's where energy and creativity and positivity intersect with your ability to be strategic, your ability to execute, your ability to collaborate with others. It's a very collaborative culture. You have to have curiosity. You have to be comfortable with change. We're in an evolving industry. It's a different company than it was 3 years ago when I joined, and 5 years ago when Jules joined. You have to have a hunger and a hustle and a desire to continue at this heightened pace of activity, but it's really fun. And there's so much joy and so much reward. It really has changed my life so positively. I can't say enough great things about the experience here and the adventure it's been for all of us.
Yeah, I think that's right. One more other thing I would add about Equinix in particular, because I'm like, we share a lot of the same views about this wonderful company that we're fortunate to work for. But like some of the skills, so regardless of whether people watching are, from Equinix or anywhere else or interested in Equinix, I think that we're a good example of a company that values that hustle, and you got to know your stuff, and you got to have the ability to get it done. But we value getting it done, bringing people with you. We value getting the job done well with less abrasion. We do value bringing that set of softer skills together so that you get people's hearts on the bus with you. And I think that's a set of skills that often women have some innate natural advantage around sort of wanting to bring the group with you, wanting to bring the team with you, and wanting to lift up. And I think we should be leveraging that and bringing the hearts on the bus with us to get, inspire people's discretionary effort to take the hill. And that I wouldn't be afraid to show that and to use that.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I love that. And I love the concept of bringing people with you. And it's such a nice segue. We've had a few folks ask, you both are recently promoted. So we've had a few participants want to know, how did you go about navigating that promotion? Did you cultivate a network of internal champions who were your sponsors? Did you make specific asks or take specific professional actions to enable you to get to that SVP level? Leanne, do you want to start or share any insight that you personally did to land your promotion?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mary. I have a formula that I use. Jules knows my formula, and I think it's pretty easy to describe. So maybe I'll share it a little bit. I think, if you're looking at a seat that you aspire to sit in, whether that's a promotion or another department you want to move in, or a different company you want to move through, I look at it in 3 categories. Your performance, which is what you do every day, being the absolute best at it, plus extra. So you always have to do more than your core job to be considered for more than your core job. And so whether that's, and it has to be in an area that creates value for the company. So how are you extending the way that you deliver value beyond what your remit actually is? And there are ways to do that. It's also your brand. What are you known for? So how do people think about you, and how will they speak about you when you're not in the room? Because the decision to promote you will be made when you're not in the room. So you want to make sure you have that really strong brand, and it is the network. So sponsorship, endorsements are key, and you can have really great performance and a really good brand. But if you don't have a network of people who are supporting you, it's really hard to move to that next level or to get into that next company. So you have to cultivate a network with as much intention as you build your own career discipline. So it's something I invest in every single week, whether that's internal or external to Equinix, to making sure that I broaden that network. And I have people at the table who are willing to sponsor and endorse me when I want to move into a different role, Mary.
Those are excellent. I would just add to those that in my recent situation, this is, again, don't just only judge yourself, get somebody you trust to talk it through with you and help you see where are the ways in which, if you're aspiring for a promotion, where are the ways in which you shine, and where are the ways that people might have questions or concerns, and how might you address those in advance for them. And so in my case, I had been very known quantity in the Americas channels role, but I hadn't been in the European or the APAC markets to those teams. And although I had global leadership elsewhere, I hadn't at Equinix, and I didn't have a firsthand understanding of their partners and their challenges. And so I purposely invested early, before formal interviews even started, in getting to know those people and in schooling myself on what I thought would be a gap in the process. I thought I could have a gap from somebody who'd already led global channel teams and partnerships and in this space in recent years. And so I went and schooled myself from the rank and file people in channel in the regions. It's what an investment, though, because that's paid such dividends now that I'm fortunate to lead this team. I have the relationships I started building before I was even formally interviewing. So that was an example of sort of like being realistic. What might people be concerned about? Is it something you can address? And I think that, another question that you get as you go to the next level in jobs is, can you be strategic? Can you create a vision and a plan? There's not a lot of substitute for that than rolling up your sleeves and trying to put one on paper and then getting feedback on it and trying to demonstrate this isn't the plan as it's going to be executed over the next 5 years, but here's where I'd start and here's how. And being willing to put yourself into that, I think that helped me. I think it helped me both in the selection, but it also helped me in how I started off in this job that I wanted so badly.
Yeah, that's great advice. And so another participant, you both kind of alluded to this in your previous responses. What advice do you have for women who are really looking to differentiate themselves in terms of building their brand and their career path within a company who may have the same goals as other colleagues? Are there key steps you think they could take to really build that brand and make them stand out as a candidate?
Do what Leanne said about you doing excellent at your job and then more.
Yeah.
Do more. The difference is in the more. It's in the, I raised my hand and volunteered for this thorny project. I raised my hand to pull everybody together and understand what is the problem and distill a few ways we could get after it. It's in the more.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It's taking an inventory of where there are gaps in the organization. I think this is how innovation happens just in life, right? You look and see there's a gap here. I see a gap. If this were fixed, there would be a value creation. How do I take ownership of it and deliver value without somebody asking me to do it first? Right. So if you're waiting for somebody to tap you on the shoulder, that may happen. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but I have found that it usually doesn't. Right. So you have to take that ownership, and that shows other people, not only can you deliver value, but you're a creator of value, right? Not waiting for something that's structured to come to you. And you may think, well, how do I figure out what that is? Listen to the analyst report, I read a ton, read about what's happening in your industry, read about what's happening with competitors. Like, look around for friction points in your business. How do you take friction out of the business or cost out of the business? How do you figure out ways to do something more simply, right? And so you can deliver value in that way. How do you look at your team members and find a way to empower them or unlock something? It doesn't necessarily have to be straight business value to a system or a tool. It can be creating a cultural force that really puts energy back into the system. And you could do it that way, or you could help to bring diversity into a company. It's hugely valuable. You can help to bring a new perspective from a community. I mean, all of those things create value in organizations.
And you can also help lift up the people around you. And doesn't go unnoticed, so amplifying other people's righteous successes is an extra step that many people get too busy to take. And we should all take it, because that person that you're recognizing has worked hard and deserves it. And so I think that's, if it's leadership you aspire to, I think amplifying other people's successes and privately and in appropriate forums is a good skill, a muscle to develop and a way to stand out very positively.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a few minutes left, so I'd like to turn it over to you both to share any parting words, key advice for women in the workforce in general, women who want to build a career at Equinix, anything that you'd like to share before we say goodbye for the afternoon. Jules, you want to kick us off?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Mary. This has been like a genuine pleasure. And this is, it's a pleasure to do this with my dear friend and for both of us to talk about a company that we both love. But it is also, I have 2 daughters. And so, when I was starting out, my oldest is 23, there wasn't a Fairygodboss kind of thing. And so just big fan of what you're all trying to do and glad to be a part of it. I think from a parting words perspective, I just say, pay it forward is what I'm trying to do. I have been the beneficiary of coaching and inspiration and hand up and good advice. And I'm trying to pay it forward. But I think as a community of women in business, if we all just a little bit of pay it forward, the dividends would be massive.
Absolutely. And Leanne?
Thank you, Mary. Thank you to you for being such a lovely host. Thank you, Jules, for being my partner always and for being part of this session with me today. I feel incredibly privileged, and to Fairygodboss, what an extraordinary organization for Equinix to partner with, to bring awareness to women's issues, to give us a platform to talk about some of the things people struggle with privately, and to share stories that help maybe demystify what the path to success is. I think having the opportunity to be transparent, to be real about what it's like to be a leader in the tech space or in any leadership role as a woman, the more that we communicate it, the more we normalize it, the more other people realize it's not magical. It's just something we all step into. Doesn't mean we're not fearful. Sometimes we are, but we kind of push through that and support each other through the process. And I find it's just extraordinary. Equinix has changed my life so positively. The people I've met are incredibly extraordinary, brilliant and personable and wonderful and generous. It's really like nothing I can appropriately describe. And there's so much joy and energy I get in my personal and professional life from the environment. It's just an incredible place to build a career. I've grown my professional and leadership skills exponentially at Equinix in such a short period of time, just the 3 years that I've been here. And like Jules said, we've helped others to grow by sharing our journeys and providing mentorship, the same types of mentorship that were given to us at different points in our career. We've also worked aggressively to expand diversity, inclusion, and belonging awareness, not just for women, but for all of the underrepresented groups that are part of our Equinix family that we want to make sure have a seat at the table and have equity and parity as we move forward in our organization. And it's an incredible place to be a creator. It just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean someone should have already done it, and so you can't do it. We're the first senior vice presidents to ever be in these roles, and I think that's within our grasp. If we don't tell ourselves no, we let somebody else do that. If that's what it's meant to happen for us. But I want to thank you, Mary. It's been such a privilege. I hope that the folks that have been able to join today have found it to be valuable and maybe are inspired, picked up a little nugget or kernel that they're inspired to think about their career maybe a little differently, and to talk to someone either in their circle or their mentor about how they can advance their careers and potentially join Equinix.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for sharing your personal career stories, as well as how you've benefited at Equinix. I found the conversation so delightful and so inspiring. So thank you for making the time to be with us today. And thank you to our partners at Equinix for sponsoring this conversation. We'll be sharing the recording with everyone, as well as more information on how you can grow your career at Equinix. And I hope everyone has a wonderful Thursday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you all. Thank you.